Hi friends, it's great to see you here, welcome. So today we are going to be talking about reading in a foreign language. Now this video will be divided into several parts. Firstly, introduction, I'm going to tell you a bit about my story. Then we will talk about two types of reading. Then I'll tell you what to read in a foreign language. And finally, we're going to be talking about how to read in a foreign language so that the process of reading is both enjoyable and efficient. I will leave the time codes in the description box below so that if you're interested in a particular part of this video, you could just skip to it. Now, before we actually begin, a little disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not an English native speaker. I was born in Moscow and I was raised there. I'd been living there for 18 years of my life. So I am going to be using English as an example of a foreign language, but don't let that confuse you because things that I'm going to be talking about are applicable to pretty much any foreign language that you're learning. So don't mind me showing you English books and saying, I am reading in a foreign language, okay? And another thing is that I am gonna add Russian subtitles to this video so that my Russian audience could use them if they need to. Now, without further ado, let's begin. So I've been learning English for approximately 6 years-ish, and after like 3 years of learning a language, I thought, well, it'd be nice to read a book in English. And I got myself, I think it was a copy of Harry Potter. I mean, what else could it be? And you know what? I never finished it. I read like the first 3 pages and then I gave up on it. And I think it's still somewhere there in Moscow in my flat, covered with dust, waiting for me to finish it, which I'm not gonna do. Anyway, I'm pretty sure that if you are learning a foreign language, you did think about reading in a foreign language, and this is understandable because reading is one of the easiest way of diving into the language environment and picking up on the modern vocabulary. But how to make it both efficient and enjoyable, how not to die of boredom, and how not to drop the book after the second page, as I did it. Now, I feel like I am expert enough to give you some advice on reading in a foreign language because I do it pretty much every single day of my life and I actually enjoy it a lot. Now, I'm obviously talking about reading in English because, you know, I'm doing an English literature degree, so that's kind of a necessity for me to read books in English. But I'm also learning German and French. French I've started like a couple of weeks ago, so I'm a complete beginner. So I'm going to be talking about things that are relevant for both beginners and fairly advanced speakers. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So first off, there are 2 types of reading: intensive reading and extensive reading. Intensive reading is when you're going through what's wrong with this word? Jesus Christ. Through that. You're going through the text with a dictionary. You're reading very, very carefully and you look up every single word that you do not know. So the emphasis here is on understanding literally everything. Extensive reading, on the other hand, so-called relaxed reading, makes an emphasis on understanding the general meaning of the passage. So you read and you do not distract at all, and in this case, dictionary is a distraction too. Of course, you are allowed to look up the words, but this should be the words that really stop you from understanding the text, or maybe the ones that appear on the page repetitively. It's important to alternate both types of reading. Okay, now let's talk about what to read in a foreign language and how to choose a book for reading in a foreign language. First and foremost, if there is something you are obsessed with, if there's a genre that you're keen on, or a book series that you absolutely adore, then definitely go for it. Pick it, like, don't listen to what I say next. Just go for it, pick it, and read it. But here are a few other important things to keep in mind. First of all, if you're just a beginner, it might be a good idea to start with so-called adapted books. So these are the books that correspond with your level of the language. I would say here it's important not to underestimate or overestimate yourself, because if you choose something that is too easy for you, you will get bored very, very soon. However, if you pick something that is like too hard, you will probably give up as well. So in order to understand if the book is good for you, before actually getting it, open it on a random page and read a few sentences. If there are a few unfamiliar words, but you understand the meaning in general, then great, go for it. However, if you do not know literally every second word, well, then probably this book is too complicated for you and it's better to go for something easier. While choosing between contemporary literature and fairly old literature, definitely go for the contemporary one. Of course, the temptation to read Goethe and Shakespeare in original is great, but trust me, it might be not the best idea. Like, it's definitely not the best idea. The vocabulary in such books is messed up. You will come across the words that you will never, never, ever use in your everyday speech. The grammar might be also messed up, so don't bother. Don't complicate your life. Probably not, but prefer short stories collection to the big novels, or actually just go for something that is divided into sections. Now, the reason for that is because it's very important that while reading, you are like finishing something. It's important for your brain, because if you finish a chapter or a short story, your brain gets that feeling of satisfaction, like we've done something. And you want this feeling of satisfaction to be associated with the process of reading in a foreign language. So any kind of sections will do. Finally, prefer fiction to non-fiction. Now, referring to my first point, if you're really obsessed with reading non-fiction books and it brings you lots of joy, then yeah, sure, go for this self-help literature. But generally, go for something with a plot. It's important because if there is a story that you can engage with, it will keep you motivated to keep reading. You will want to find out what happens with these characters. Did they get married? Who's the killer? How did they end up in there? And so on, so on, so on. Last but not least, how to make reading both fun and useful. First off, limit yourself. In other words, set yourself a particular amount of time or pages that you want to read per day. I would say if you're just a beginner, go with pages. Don't be too ambitious, because if you don't achieve the first goal that you've set, you will get demotivated. So let's say read 10 pages per day. If 10 pages is too much, 5 pages. You can also set yourself deadlines. For example, I want to finish this book in 2 weeks, or I want to read this by Saturday. The deadlines are really helpful, especially if you're reading for pleasure and like no one is checking on you and controlling you. It's easy to just relax and be like, I'm gonna read it later today. Oh, didn't do it today. Okay, gonna do it tomorrow, and then you never do it. If you have an opportunity, read together with a friend. You will motivate each other. Or for instance, well, I'm quite lucky at this point, but as I said, I'm learning French and I am trying to read in French at least like 2 or 3 times per week. And every time when I do it, I record myself and I send the recording to a friend of mine who is French. And not only she checks my pronunciation, but she literally motivates me to do it, because I'm like, okay, I have to send the recording to Jade, like, okay, I have to read this chapter. If you can read online, then do it. The reason for that is because while reading online, you can click on the word while reading, and then you have this window like define a lookup, and you click on that, and you have the definition of your word or the translation of your word right here, right now, so you don't have to open the dictionary, you don't have to like type in the word, you don't have to waste your time on that. It's really convenient. Next thing, also related to the vocabulary, because that's a big part of a reading process, you know. Do not scribble down every single word that you translate. Of course, you can have a vocabulary book, but believe me, if you are taking down every single word that you don't know, you will give up in 5 seconds. I would say if you really want to take down the vocabulary, then highlight the words and take them down later after you finish reading. Or maybe focus on like 2-3 unknown words per page. Also, don't take down useless words, because you will come across something that you will never use in your everyday speech. Also, while writing the words down, write them down with the context, or maybe even come up with your own sentence with this word. Then the chances that you will actually remember it increase. Oh, last thing related to remembering the vocabulary. Firstly, guess, only then look up. So even if you're reading intensively, firstly try to guess the word from the context and only then look it up. And while looking it up, if you're a beginner, then definitely go for a translation. But if you're already fairly good at the language, then definitely go for a definition. And last two things that I personally use all the time while reading, it helps me so much. Read aloud or read while listening an audiobook. So essentially reading aloud just increases your understanding of the text so much, because you know, these moments when you're like, your eyes are going through the page, but your mind is somewhere else. Reading aloud prevents this. You also train your pronunciation while reading aloud. It's so much more convenient. Or if you are a beginner, or if you're just tired, then turn on the audiobook. There are loads of audiobooks on YouTube, and read while listening to the audiobook. You'll know how to pronounce the words, and again, it makes the reading so much easier. For instance, like if I know that I have a tutorial tomorrow, but I haven't read the book, I will most likely turn on the audiobook, but because I can't just listen to the audiobook, like I will miss almost everything, I just open the text and I go through the text with my eyes, but I listen to the audiobook, so you know. So I dare you to read a book in a foreign language. I know that you can do it. Look, when I came to the university, they threw at me all this medieval English text and it was fine. So if I did it, you can do it too. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you soon. Bye!